Partial quotients is one strategy to use when dividing. It's particularly a strategy that we use when we don't really know the multiplication tables of the divisor. In the problem 8,913 divided by 17, we are dividing by 17 and I don't really know my 17 times tables, so I'm going to come over to the side and make a help box. And under my help box, I'm going to list out my 17 times tables that I know and that are easy. So 17 times 1, I know is 17. 17 times 2, I may not know, but if I know that anything times 2, I just add it twice or use the doubles facts, I would get my answer. So I come over and say 17 plus 17. 7 plus 7 is 14. Put your 4 down, carry your 1. And 1, 1, and 1 gives me 3. So 17 times 2 is 34. Now, the great thing about partial quotients is you don't need to know all of your multiplication facts. I'm only going to do the easy ones or just a couple. So 17 times 5. I'm going to come over to the side, 17 times 5. 7 times 5 is 35. I put my 5 down, I carry my 3. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So 17 times 5 is 85. Now, again, with partial quotients, you do not need to know all of your multiplication facts. As a matter of fact, if you know your divisor times 1, 2, and 5, then you can still solve the problem. So I have done 1, 2, and 5, and now I can say 17 times 10. 17 times 10 is very easy because 17 times 1 is 17. 17 times 10 would be 170. Notice here it's the same thing except for a 0 and the same as your answer. You just add a 0 on the end. 17 times 2 was 34, so 17 times 20 would give me 340. There again, I'm just adding a 0 to 20 and then a 0 to my answer of 340. 17 times 5 was 85, so 17 times 50 would be 850. And this works with all numbers. If you add a 0, then the answer, you would add a 0 as well. I'm going to move on to 17 times 100. And here I've added 2 zeros. So in my answer, I would add 2 zeros. 17 times 1 was 17. So 17 times 100 would be 1,700. Again, I'm adding 2 zeros. 17 times 2 was 34, so 17 times 200 would be 3,400. 17 times 5 was 85, so 17 times 500 would be 8,500. And I'm getting close to what my dividend is, so I'm going to stop there. Now with partial quotients, once you get your help box, then you're looking for a number that you can subtract from the dividend. So 8,913, what is the largest possible number here that we could subtract from that? And I see the largest possible one is 8,500. So I'm going to come over here and say minus 8,500. Now, what did I multiply by to get 8,500? It was 500. So over to the side, I'm going to write a multiplication sign and then 500. That lets me know that I multiplied 17 times 500 to get 8,500. Now I simply subtract. 3 minus 0 is 3. 1 minus 0 is 1. 9 minus 5 is 4. And 8 minus 8 is nothing. So I will leave that blank. Now I have 413, so I look back into my help box and I'm looking for the largest number possible that I could subtract from 413. The largest possible one that I see is 340. So I come over here and I say minus 340. And then to the side, I'm going to write what I multiplied 17 by to get 340, and that was 20. So times 20. Now that I've done that, I simply subtract. 3 minus 0 is 3. 1 minus 4, I cannot do that. So I need to borrow 100 from the 400 and make it 300. And then I'm going to bring over the 100 into the tens place. That gives me 11 tens minus 4 tens. So 11 minus 4 is going to give me 7. And 3 minus 3 is nothing. So I'm left with 73. So again, I need to look over to my help box and find a number that is large enough to subtract from 73. The number that I see is 34. So I'm going to say minus 34. And to the side, I'm going to write what did I multiply 17 by to get 34? It was 2. So now I'm going to subtract. I can't say 3 minus 4, so I'm going to borrow, make this a 6, and then the 3 becomes a 13. 13 minus 4 is 9, and 6 minus 3 is 3. So I have 39. If I look over to my help box, I can subtract another 34, so I write minus 34. And what did I multiply 17 by to get 34? 2, so times 2. And then I subtract. 9 minus 4 is 5, and 3 minus 3 is nothing. So now I'm left with 5. Nothing times 17 would give me 5. So I'm going to stop there. That would be my remainder. And to find the answer now, you're going to take the numbers that were multiplied by 17 to get you all of the numbers that you subtracted, and you're going to add them. So 0, 0, 2, and 2, I add those and I get 4. 0 and 2 gives me 2 and 500. So my final answer is 524 with a remainder of 5. Here we are given the problem 4,322 divided by 15. There's many strategies that we can use to solve a division problem, but in this particular case, I don't necessarily know 15 times 7 in my head or 15 times 9 in my head, so I'm going to use partial quotients. And partial quotients is a strategy that students can use when they don't know all of the multiplication tables of the divisor. So when we're using partial quotients, the first thing we're going to do is start a help box. So I'm going to come over to the side and I'm going to label it help box. And underneath the help box, I'm just listing the multiplication tables that are easy or that I know of 15. So 15 times 1, I know that one's 15. 15 times 2, I happen to know that one's 30, but if I didn't know, it would be very easy for me to figure it out. Anything times 2, I just double it. So 15 times 2 would be 15 plus 15. 5 plus 5 is 10. Put my 0 down, carry my 1. 1, 1, and 1 is 30. So 15 times 2 is 30. Now, I could do 15 times 3, 15 times 4, but I don't necessarily know my 3s or 4s. I do know most students find 5s to be easier to work with, so I'm going to come over to the side and write 15 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. I put my 5 down, I carry my 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So 15 times 5 is 75. You as a student decide which multiplication tables of 15 you want to put down. I could also do 15 times 6, times 7, times 8, and times 9, but those are generally ones that students have problems with, so I'm going to stick with just 1, 2, and 5. Now from that, I can also continue on. 15 times 1 was 15. So if I add a 0 to the 1, it now becomes 15 times 10. And then all I have to do is add a 0 to my answer or my product. The answer of 15 times 10 is 150. 15 times 2 was 30. So if I add a 0 to the 2, it's now 15 times 20. And then I add a 0 to my answer. So 15 times 20 gives me 300. 15 times 5 was 75. So if I add a 0 to the 5, it now becomes a 50. And adding a 0 to my answer, the answer is 750. 15 times 100. Here I'm adding 2 zeros. So up here, I look, 15 times 1 was 15. Add 2 zeros, and my answer is 1,500. 15 times 2 was 30. So if I add 2 zeros, then I add 2 zeros to the answer. 15 times 200 is 3,000. 15 times 5 gave me 75. If I add 2 zeros, it's now 15 times 500. Add 2 zeros, my answer is 7,500. Now notice 7,500 is more than what my dividend is, 4,322. So as soon as you get a number or a product answer that is larger than your dividend, then you can stop. So now I have finished or completed my help box. So it's time to begin. The 4,322, I'm looking at the answers or the products, and I'm looking for something that I could subtract from the 4,322. Now, most of these I can subtract, but I also want to find the largest one. That way I'm not subtracting a lot. So 3,000 I can subtract. So I'm going to come over here and write minus 3,000. And then over to the side, you write what you multiplied 15 by to get 3,000. So 15 times 200 gave me 3,000. Now I just simply subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 0 is 3. And 4 minus 3 is 1. 1,322. Again, I look back at my products. I cannot subtract 3,000. I cannot subtract 1,500, but I can subtract 750. So I write minus 750. And over to the side, I multiplied 15 times 50 to get 750. So I'm going to write times 50. And now I subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2. 2 minus 5, I can't do that. So I'm going to borrow from the 3. This becomes a 2. And now the 2 in the tens place is a 12. So 12 minus 5 is 7. 2 minus 7, I can't do that. So I'm going to borrow from the 1. It's now a 0. And this 2 is a 12. So 12 minus 7 is 5. 572, I cannot subtract 750 from that. But I can subtract 300. So I'm going to write minus 300. And over to the side, 15 times 20 gave me 300, so I'm going to write times 20 over to the side. And I'm going to subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2, 7 minus 0 is 7, and 5 minus 3 is 2. So now I have 272. I cannot subtract 300, but I can subtract 150 from that, so minus 150. And to the side, 15 times 10 gave me 150, so I'm going to write times 10. And then I'm going to subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2, 7 minus 5 is 2, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So now I have 122. Looking at my products, I cannot subtract 150 from that, but I can subtract 75. So minus 75. And then over to the side, 15 times 5 gave me 75, so I'm going to write times 5. And then I subtract. 2 minus 5 I can't do. I'm going to borrow from this 2. It becomes a 1. And then the 2 in the ones place is now 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. 1 minus 7 I cannot do. So I'm going to borrow from this 1. It becomes a 0. And now in my tens place I have an 11. 11 minus 7 gives me 4. And 0 minus nothing is 0. So now I have 47. I cannot subtract 75, but I can subtract a 30. So I'm going to come over and say minus 30. And 15 times 2 gave me 30. So I write times 2 and now subtract. 7 minus 0 is 7. 4 minus 3 is 1. Looking at your products, I can subtract a 15. So minus 15, and 15 times 1 gave me 15. So I'm going to write times 1, and then I subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2. Now I am left with a number that is smaller than my divisor. That means I cannot subtract anything else from it. So that lets me know that I am done, but this is still not my answer. To find your answer using partial quotients, you're going to take all of the numbers that you multiplied by, and you're going to add them together. So 200 plus 50 plus 20 plus 10 plus 5 plus 2 plus 1. When I add the ones, I get 5 plus 2 plus 1. That gives me 8. When I add the tens, 0 plus 5 is 5. Plus 2 is 7, plus 1 is 8. And now I'm going to add the hundreds. There's only one number with hundreds place value, and that's a 2. So 2. Now, this may be a little confusing the way I added it. If you wanted to, you could line them all up closer together so that it's easier to see the numbers that you're adding. I got 288 when I added. This is still not my final answer. This is how many times 15 will go into 4,322. However, I do have some left over. When I divided that, I had a 2 left over, so that is my remainder. And now this gives us our final answer. 4,322 divided by 15 is 288 with a remainder of 2.